Welcome, and if you're here for two questions. As you can see that the thermal and the sound is going there. We have roughly a base of about 121 Fahrenheit to 50 Celsius. Now I'm going to keep it in Celsius myself, and you can see that we have a baseline audio. What I'm trying to cover today is going to be two attributes. One, where we're looking at the roadmaps of where liquid metal will be something that we can see a difference in the way that thermal performance happens and the way that I run my PlayStation 4 Pro, that's a day one, the 7000 series, is with the lid off. So we're going to be looking at that advantage too. If you don't want a liquid metal, there is a chance where you can just pop off the top and it lowers down the quietable points of intake. Now obviously if you are streaming, there's still going to be a fan going in the background. The other lid, you have to do the sacrifice of the audio going up even farther past that. So personally myself, I went to the sacrifice of going the lid off with just cleaning it here and there. So looking at that, we're going to look towards answering the question if the issue with the APU in the PlayStation 4 Pro is thermal reduction. So if we have a better transfer of heat between the two of the die and the physical heat dissipating portion of it, and like you look at the heat sink and the way that it'll actually be performing, and you can hear that the minute we get the PlayStation like exclusives, the only thing you'll see on Reddit forums among other things that you'll cover on patches is the FPS drops and all these other things that would occur when a processor is going to have to start to throttle back. So my question is, even with the gallium point of utilizing the copper and the heatsink and like how that can be effective, yes, I do understand the I guess detriments of what can come about with utilizing liquid metal, like down to a portion of where if you're utilizing nickel, you have way less of a portion where it's just stains. This isn't as bad though, and it's not going to impact thermal portions. And I will be doing a follow-up video 2 years down the road to see the impact of this PlayStation 4 Pro and what it had between its copper portions. And we will be making sure that we keep the like nice little chiplets that are right next to the APU dies with a fingernail polish around it in order to keep it completely safe. Now I'm not going to go step by step. There's plenty of great creators out there that have covered that. Like you can always look up UFD Tex. He has a great one that like kind of like went down to it, and other great creators out there that physically have that as well. I'll be showing a little bit of like the breakdown of what it looks like inside, but I'm not going to be going point for point with like a time lapse. This is more of testing of the PlayStation exclusives that control what we can do with PlayStation performance. Now, one of the things that I want to kind of look at very firstly is going down to the portion of looking at load times. With coming into that situation of where we can test this, you can see right here, we'll be going back to back where they post and pre, you can see where the game kind of shutters. And this is kind of a great game. I understand like it's like a very top contender for showcasing some RTX, which I know the PlayStation 4 Pro does not have. But with that integration into a console, you can see where it struggles with like loading in, and you can kind of see where it first starts off. You can see frame tears and it's just kind of like tripping out and it just doesn't know what to do, and you can see the ghosting around her alias oval point. But besides that portion of looking at this game, I'll be looking at two other portions, which the second test is going to be your friendly Spider-Man. So let's go ahead and load this in real fast and see how long this takes as well. Now, pushing past that portion of what we'll be looking at the performance point, it's roughly about 10 degrees that you'll end up losing with the liquid metal, but I'm looking for more of the question of if it does help with these titles like we have had on Uncharted and all these other great games where people have reported repeatedly that, you know, the FPS portions are going to be the main concern of a lot of people, but my other concern would also be loading times. And what we're waiting in, as well as from pressing a button from continue going into an actual physical fight with whatever characters you're trying to get into inside of an exclusive or in any console in that direct thing. I think for the PlayStation 4 Pro, it's really well suited. Quite frankly, by the time you would need to change to the liquid metal, which is about a year or two down the road, you wouldn't be really dealing with too much besides just getting some kind of situational points of like, I guess, removal. Now this is going to be the third one that we'll be testing, so it's going to be God of War, Spider-Man, and Days Gone, the exclusives that will be running against each other with benchmarks of thermals, audio, and direct load-ins.
This is Radio Free Oregon. The truth shall set you free. Who remembers the skid rows of this great country? People living on the streets in boxes and tents because they couldn't afford the American dream. Some of those good people fought for this very country, only to have the feds forget about them as soon as they were done with them. PTSD?
As you can see, I pointed and showcased Days Gone right there a little bit longer just to see where the audio's kind of peaked, and roughly you can see the majority of games you're looking at roughly about like 53 on your decibel to 51 within that range, but your temperatures are roughly around like the 51 Celsius going down to roughly about like 49 Celsius as your base temperatures, roughly putting you in about like 125, 129 on your Fahrenheit. So here's a nice close-up of my PlayStation 4 Pro with the lid off, and you can see that, yeah, it does have a little bit of dust around the edge, which was right around the time I clean it every month, give or take. But we're gonna go ahead and dismantle it. We'll see some dust bunnies, and we'll get to the motherboard, and we'll show the application as well as the situation of the cleanup. One thing I did want to point out, and I freshly just did this right after it, I ripped apart the system itself. You can see right down below, and you can see right there that the hard drive itself was pretty ridiculously warm. So, I mean, almost like 104 degrees. I was like, that's pretty warm. So I'm hoping that this might help clear up a little bit of the heat distribution and just help this poor little feller. I know it's solid state and it's really great, but anything I can do to keep technology cool, it runs a little bit better. Wanted to point out that's not too bad for just uncovering this much. Not a lot of dust bunnies. The only thing it seems like it had was an intake fan, so I'm more curious to see what the heat sink looks like once we take everything apart. So I got the back cover, and those are where the thermal pads have basically connectivity between the chips on the back, and I'm going to be replacing all of those, which have some new contacts fully across it, because you can see that there's a lot of like what seems like electronical leaking between the heat and like cold transfer between the thermal pads and that. So I kind of want to dress it up, make it a little bit nicer, help my system breathe. Just so everyone can see what I'm looking at a little bit closer, that's what I'm talking about with the residue. And this is a day one. I bought this when it first launched back in the day. Okay, everyone, so I got everything cleaned up, and as you can see right here, that some of the old pads like broke like while taking it apart, and they're still just like pretty much brittle and just they seem like saturated with something. And I found that on the rest of the board. You can see I cleaned it up pretty well. I just need to make sure that I get all the lint off there, which I can see on the bottom left one right now, looking at it very tiny. It looks like a little V, like a seagull flying there. But anyways, let me go ahead and get the bottom off. We'll go ahead and look at the APU. So there's going to be a few things that I'm going to point out. Now you can see that the thermal paste is pretty much just, well, on its way out, and it's kind of done sloppily, like way too much. Like they just globbed it on there because the Pro is going to be hardcore. Yeah, we're going to make this look so much better. One of the other things I wanted to mention is all these chips right here are something that seems to be along the lines where the heat sink is. You can see right here. Where is it? Where was the second issue I wanted to point out to everyone? As you can see, that yes, having it open air is cooler, and yeah, it does make it like a little bit quieter, but you can see that, well, hell, there's a lot of dust bunnies there, and on the side, you can see that we're gonna have to do some cleaning on that. Same thing with the application for as far as the thermal paste on this side. But one of the more important things that I wanted to physically like point out was like the rail, all the thermal pads that are on this side. That's where the chips that I'm pointing out right now, and those are kind of leaked, and these are kind of brittle too, almost like soaked. So I'm gonna replace those as well and kind of give it a nice breathing room. So I'll be back when I have everything cleaned up and we're about to apply the liquid metal. Another thing I want to point out is it is always nice to unapply these batteries. That way it just refreshes everything and you don't have anything going through there. If it has any like error points while you're taking it apart, it's just like a natural reset. So I went ahead and cleaned it all up. Looks pretty good compared to what it was originally there. I'm gonna go ahead and get the thermal plate and show you guys and gals what's gonna be the cleanup with that. So you can see this is where I mentioned before it was way too much. You can see that literally you're looking at like a pile of it looks like a mount thermal paste. Got a flag on that. So now these are final products I have on both sides of the ducting portions that we're going to have the liquid metal sandwich going in between there. So it came out really beautiful. I like the finished touch. Now this is more important to the 2-year challenge later on to this video reference where you can kind of see that the copper is perfect. And this is where liquid metal comes down to the pros to the cons. Yes, the pros is definitely added benefit for the heat transformation, the dissipation of that between heat and the APU. So, you know, we need to see a very good picture of this, I suppose. That's why I'm going to spend the whole time on this. But let's go ahead and get everything coated now. And as you can see, you don't want to use a little aluminum, and as it is surrounded by aluminum, we're going to be very careful with that, applying that. And Dave Bauer, a very cool person in the industry who helps connect a knot, who we're going to be utilizing their thermal grizzly connect a knot today. He is helping out there and sponsors it, so that's kind of where I got the actual, like, I guess, courage to want to do this in a situation. So cheers. I have all my toolkit and stuff like that with the amazingness. Let's go ahead and get to it, and we'll see the before and after. So not too bad. It came out pretty well. Already changed over the thermal pads on the top. Liquid metal is now applied over there, and the nail polish is there guarding it directly on top of there. Now let me go ahead and show you what I did to the copper heatsink. As you can see, both are right there. There goes my board. It's gonna be pretty sweet. I'm liking that, like the new thermal pads will be there. That'll be completely liquid awesomeness. So let's put it together and see what happens. I'm going to show the back side of everything as we kind of slap it together. This side's done, but the other side with the other thermal pads. So you can see that I took a little liberal right with the extra pads that I had for the thermal pads and decided to beef it up and see if I can give every single chip on this board, for the most part, fighting direct chance to have its like cooldown. And we'll also see if there's any, like, I guess in the 2-year challenge looking back, if there's any drawbacks to putting those with, if there's any, I guess, leaking, as we saw as the other thermal pads when you took them off, they just kind of like sweated out what was seeming like the thermal, like, I guess, compounded pad that they have. But let's go ahead and get everything back together and we're going to fire it up. Okay everyone, so we have everything geared up and ready to be turned on. You can see the decibel level right now is showing 39 is our base, give or take. So you have it right around the gain of last time where we were roughly around like 50, 51, give or take, maybe a little higher. So that's roughly within about a gain. So think about that, 11 decibels, give or take, from that from the PlayStation 4, besides my computer lab, which is the baseline of everything that's here. So that way we can kind of like understand. And everything is farther away, but I'm just taking into consideration everything around. Now that we have the thermostat on, let me just give this a little bit of a better tilt so you can see the decibel levels. Let's turn it on and see what happens here. I'm hoping it will work. Really seems like it turned on right away. The fans. So again, I wasn't going to see too much in the base level for the decibels go down a lot. I heard that it really doesn't matter too much, but temperature is where I'm like more concerned about. So since this is definitely a success and everything's there, now I haven't plugged in my external. This is just me just plugging in here, so I can't access any of the games. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna unplug my external now so that I know this works, and we'll get some temperature readings. Now I wanted to do some testing in a variety of gaming. And as you can see, our base temperature now is going roughly around like 117 to 116 depending on our load and what game. You know, like if I pop underneath like Days Gone, we'll probably get around 115, 114, 116 within like when we're active. Now, I do notice that the decibel level is a little bit more prevalent, but that does make sense since liquid metal is transferring the heat through it likes to feed off of heat. That's why you can't utilize like any kind of like liquid nitrogen or any like dry ice solutions where you like drop the cooling point and having the thermal bonding portion of the transfer of the heat work. This works the exact opposite, the hotter it gets. So that probably makes sense where it's turning up the ramping portions of the fan here and there. Now it's listening to my voice obviously right now since I'm not too far from the PlayStation. But you can see as it loads in right there, the load times aren't as bad than what it used to. Now, to be fair, running this test for the first time, this is just clicking over to HDR. It's not a scare like I had the first time where I got into the menu and I went to go press the load into like this save and it just crashed and I was like, oh no, what happened? And basically the first time you apply liquid metal down there, you really have to like work in this solution into basically getting it into the portion of applying across to it. So I just had to basically add a little bit more, and it just like I stress test it for about like a good hour or so, going through like cutscenes, and it like now it's super consistent. And so it's like you don't want to go too less, you don't want to go too much. Luckily for me, it's just like I caught it right when I was hearing the fans ramp up. I was like, nope, that's not normal. So I shut it off just in time, and like I was able to catch it. Like once I looked underneath, I was like, yeah, that doesn't look completely right, and went back to applying it. And here I am, being able to play Days Gone. Now,
Shall set you free.
I'm gonna be like quiet and do some gameplay real fast, as you guys and gals can hear the fan ramp up.
In boxes and tents because they couldn't afford the American dream. Some of those good people fought for this very country, only to have the feds forget about them as soon as they were done with them. PTSD doesn't stand for post-traumatic stress disorder. It stands for put them soldiers down. Well, we're all in this now. Living in the wilderness in the way of our forebears. The feds used to think we needed their welfare and handouts to survive. We showed them how wrong they were.
So you can basically see the temperature, like I said, around like 116, give or take. And that's also where you're getting the decibel point where it's like a little bit louder than what it was originally. Where the other thermal paste was doing like more of a, I guess, a good job of keeping the rampage, everything down.
That's great.
Yeah. Glider fight. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on real fast. Heck no. Okay, so that was pretty good for like gameplay testing real fast. Next we'll test out control just to see exactly like what the load times are once we get past the save point going forward, they continue going on. The reason why I wanted to showcase this because I'm not really trying to test it too much, but it's more of the preload in. When I tried this the first time, it had like a very clean shutter, like stutter, like it would come around the bend, and it still does kind of have it slightly, as you can kind of see there, but it's not as bad. And it just basically trucks through it till it gets about halfway through, and then it's like, all right, fine, I'm fine. It runs the system completely okay and speeds up to it. Now the entrance into here is probably one of the more better performance. Now, to be fair, when I was filming this directly, I did notice that you know, they did get a big update, but it doesn't stutter a lot. It seems like you can kind of do this a lot. You can kind of still see where it's like breaking and like the shadowing when you turn like really fast for the FPS, but for as far as temperatures, it's actually pretty nice compared to what I used with Wii U 4. Now let's see how fast Spider-Man comes into play. You can see he's just hanging out there, so we're gonna go ahead and select our file, continue and load in. It has to click back into HDR. That's just the way that I can encode stuff in 4K. It just switches very weird sometimes, but so far so good. I'm thinking that this is going to be a damn. That was really fast. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And I love this game. So much fun. Game itself looks pretty cool, especially when you get down to the point of being able to web sling into situations. That's where you start to hear it like ramp up. It's like really interesting to play. So we're back with God of War, which is pretty cool, and you can already hear it's ramping up because everything's a constant CG inside of this game. But let's go ahead and take a peek and see how long it takes to load real fast. Now again, the decibels are decently high, but not as high. It just depends on what it's loading in and what it's doing. It's very cool to see how chill the temperatures are, though. That's like probably one of the bigger steps up, because I feel like we already like dropped by at least a solid 10 plus. Love this game too. But one of the things that I do point out that you can kind of stress the system out is put the game in like a crazy situation and then have it run the UI underneath it, and you'll start to see that like a lot of the things are a little bit different. They'll start heftying up a little bit. As you see where the fan now is like almost matching my voice decibel, but the temperature is staying the same. It's like almost pegged. It won't go past 16. I haven't seen a 17. Now maybe if I go directly over it, maybe it might. And I'm not discounting that that's not what's directly at the core. The core probably has like a variant of probably plus or 3, like I would assume Fahrenheit, 1 or 2 Celsius, like I would say, like they bounce up of like if you were directly on the core in that situation of it. But besides that, this is a really great, like, I guess, success. One of the cool things that I'll put at the very end of the Easter egg of this video, which I thought was pretty cool, was that I've been playing Tropico 6, and one of the issues that I had was when it would autosave, it would completely freeze, and like, quite frankly, it just wasn't able to handle the magnitude of like a huge game where you're just like building stuff. And like it would just like anytime you get down to an autosave, I would detect it. It would just like instantly like freeze the game, and like you'd be able to like not be able to press play and do this like free point. So I'm gonna say, if you really don't care about the warranty of the situation and you're okay with a little bit of stainage that's going to happen because of the copper transfer of the ion point, and you're probably okay with getting like another like maybe heatsink later on down the road, or buying another PlayStation 4 Pro if you're really nostalgic enough to have it past the PlayStation 5, which is rumored supposed to be completely backwards compatibility. But we'll see as we get a little bit closer towards the 2020 holiday. As you can see that I have to build some buildings inside of the situation of like what Tropico is. But if you're new to the network, you can always subscribe. I do a whole bunch of cool stuff, but if you don't know that my friend back there, Murray, me and him will go on an island and we'll have an adventure and have a lot of monkey business that will happen in between then and there. We'll meet a pirate named Gabrus Breathroot. You should really subscribe, it would be amazing. But all subscription humor aside, I do a lot of cool stuff past like this project, which is just like tearing something apart for an idea and seeing if the improvement would be there, which it definitely is, and the gain of performance and the actual physical portion of being able to play the games that you want on a console without it hitting the next gen wall of the torch pass of the next generation becoming a current generation. PlayStation 5 is almost here, but PlayStation 4 needs to bridge that gap, and the games that are here in between that gap are just a little bit too more powerful, and that's where the PC Master Race wins yet again. So I do a whole bunch of other stuff past like this. You can always check out my network if you are new, but have a very nice day, and I'll see you guys and gals in the near future with the new projects and other situations. And if everyone would like to leave a comment and directly down below, you can if you like. And I understand that this is probably going to hit a lot of buzz with people wanting to say that Liquid metal definitely destroys the processor and or the portion of that. Yeah, I know the risk. I took it, and quite frankly, I think I can live with it when my game works really well, and I'll probably clean it again within the 2-year challenge to see exactly what happens. So save, subscribe to see what happens, people. I'll see you guys and gals in the near future. I think I have to make a few deals. Anything, sell.